Welcome to the House of Truth. Last week we talked about the blessing of work, and how work was work was given to man before man before the fall. In fact, God gave man a job before He gave him a wife. And now work only became a curse when it was cursed because of the fall and through disobedience. But God made a remedy where people would obey Him. He would bless the work of their hands, and work would turn out fruitful and provide them for more than enough for themselves and others, because work is a blessing. But now this week we're going to look on the flip side, the curse of laziness, and we're going to look at why laziness is such a curse. Now we're going to start right here. We're going to start right here in Judges 18:9 through 10. And they said, "Arise, and we go up against them. We have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. And are you still? Be not slothful to go, but to enter into the promised land, and go to possess the land. When you go, you shall come into the people secure, into a large land. For God has given into your hands a place where there's no want of anything is in the earth." Well, a little background here. This is inside the promised land, the land that was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And when Joshua, at the end of his life, said there's much land left to be possessed, even though they'd taken a great number of cities and whatever, still lots of land up there. And this particular place was called Laish. He's talking about. It's inside the boundaries of the promised land. And the situation was this: it was an easy win for them. There was the people there up there. Oh, they lived wickedly. Basically, weren't organized. Didn't have any kind of army, any kind of real defenses. Didn't even have a magistrate, didn't even have anyone in charge, and just were just generally careless. And how they lived, although they did live wickedly. And it was an easy win, but for 300 years it had sat there untaken because of laziness. When you see slothful here in the King James, just think lazy. Do not be too lazy to go and possess the land. A place that want no good thing in all the earth was theirs for the taking and promised to them. They had just to quit being lazy and go take it. So laziness had kept them from getting something that God already provided. And a little bit about the perspective how this was to Yahuwah, God the Father. As vinegar of the teeth and smoke to the eyes, as a sluggard to them that send him. Now, when it's vinegar of the teeth, of course, then maybe just eating vinegar. It's sort of like you have a hole in your tooth, and you get vinegar in the cavity or something. Boy, it's irritating. Have you ever been camping or something and had the wind blow and the smoke all gets in your eyes and it just irritates your eyes? Well, that's what it's like to someone who sends someone that's lazy to take care of something. They just kind of goof off, don't get it done. They're just irritating as they can be. And these people had been lazy. They were irritating the Father. He had given it to them for 300 years. They'd been too lazy to go get it. Again, it was an easy win. In fact, when they did go get it, they didn't take any people to do it. But the same applies to us, not just the ancient Israelites taking the land. It applies to us as well. The same thing that irritates Father about them will irritate Him about us. We're not careful. In Hebrews 10:6 through 12 expounds upon this. "For God is not unrighteous to forget your work and labor of love, which is shown to His name. You have ministered to the saints that do minister. We desire every one of you to show the same diligence to all the full assurance of hope unto the end. That you be not slothful, but followers of them who through patience and faith inherited the promises." Okay, so now I want you to notice this. God is not forgetful about, unrighteous to forget our work and labor of love they have showed towards His name. When we do work that's for Him, He told us to do. He didn't forget about it. It's never going to be in vain. We are going to be rewarded. And what we need to do is have diligence. Notice here, diligence is as opposed to slothfulness, to laziness. We need to be. And with this patience here, it's really perseverance might be a better word translation. We have confidence in what God said that leads to actions, And we have perseverance to inherit what he promised to give us, to obtain what he promised. So the same was true for them is true for us. So let's look at some at how what causes laziness and maybe how to overcome it. Proverbs 6 through 11. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which have no guide, overseer, or ruler, provides her meat in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. How long will you sleep, O sluggard? When will you arise out of your sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall your poverty come as a man that travels, and your want as an armed man. So, I want you to notice this. Now, he says the sluggard's just a lazy person. Look, Mr. Lazy, look at the ant. And if you ever had an ant farm, these things are popular off and on different times. Like in the 1970s, they were very popular. And why were the ant popular? Because the ants were always doing something if you looked in there. I mean, the queen ant, she was sitting there laying eggs, but she was laying them continuously. They had the little nursery ants and everyone else. And they're all busy all the time. Here's the thing. The queen ant's a bit of a misnomer because the queen's not really giving anyone directions. She's the queen because everyone's taking care of her. But every one of them knew their job and they went and did it. They didn't have to have anyone to tell them. They looked for work they could do and would help the colony, and they did it. And he's telling the lazy person to do that because that's wise. And to be like the ant, who gets what who takes advantage of the season when things can be gotten, can be taken care of, and gathers in the harvest. The harvest is, of course, she's gathering the food and when it's plentiful, so it'll be available when it's not. So what's causing the sluggard not to do this? Most of the time, sleep. The sluggard is choosing sleep instead of work. The lazy person. You need to rise because a little sleep, it just takes a little sleep. No, it's a little. Just a little rest when you should be working. Just a little at a time, and poverty will come upon you as an unexpected visitor. So someone was one of the travels. And it'll come upon you like a bandit you did not expect, or a mugger that you had no idea was going to come. Something will happen, and you'll find yourself in poverty because you didn't work when you could have and should have. And here's another thing. Proverbs 19:15. We learn about laziness and sleep. Laziness casts into a deep sleep, and an idle soul shall suffer hunger. People sometimes they're feeling tired when saying they've got an active amount of sleep, say 8 hours a day. They're feeling tired. Their thought is, I'll get some more sleep. But the truth is, at that point they're being lazy, and it actually doesn't make them less tired. It actually causes them to become more sleepy. It just causes them to sleep deeper, and they'll get a cycle. It's kind of not like it's what I call a stupid cycle. An example of this is someone's depressed because they're overweight, so they eat a bowl of chocolate ice cream to feel better, which adds to their weight, and now they're depressed more from being overweight. And just repeat, rinse, and lather. I mean, wash, rinse, repeat. They just keep doing the same thing. That's the same thing. If you're feeling tired if you say to yourself, have I slept 8 hours? Yes. Am I still tired? Yes. Well, sleeping more is not the solution. Unless you got some sort of deadly disease, like anyways, unless you got something extremely unusual medical going on, that's not the. And even then, it won't really cause you. It won't cause you. What you need to do is get out and be counterintuitive, and get up and get moving, to get that deep sleep. Because being lazy, the lazy person is going to end up suffering hunger. Love not to sleep, lest you come to poverty. Open your eyes, and you shall be satisfied with bread. Now, notice it says love not sleep. There's people who love to sleep. You ask them, they love to sleep. If they had a choice between do anything else, sleep, they pick sleep. If they had a choice between sleeping and sex, they said they'd pick sleep and hope they dreamed of sex. I mean, if they had a choice between sleeping and eating, they'd sleep and hope they dreamed of eating. I mean, they just love sleep. And the thing is, it's a robber. It brings them to poverty. I used to have a friend who was way out of his time. I mean, pretty much as soon as fiber optics were invented, he was all over them. Explain to me all their uses, how they could be used in the future, and all this stuff. And the guy had the makings of a great electrical engineer, and someone that could have been groundbreaking and made a lot of these groundbreaking things for telecommunications that made the internet possible. And when it was pretty much wired, fiber optics made it possible. But the guy lived in poverty, and to my knowledge, this day still does, because he was too lazy to apply himself. And the cause of him being too lazy was he just simply loved sleep too much. The guy wake up after 16 hours of sleep, and I've been busy doing stuff for 12 hours, which 4 hours sleep, by the way, is not a good idea either. But he's always just not had anything because he loves sleep. So you've got to quit loving sleep if that describes you. You gotta realize more sleep than what you actually need is a robber. Okay, so that's a curse. That's a curse of laziness, because it puts you in a vicious cycle, needing to sleep more, and the more you sleep, the lazier you become, and the poorer you become. Okay, Proverbs 10:4-5. We got another one here. He that becomes poor deals with a slack hand, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. He that gathers in the summer is a wise son. He sleeps in the harvest, the son that causes shame. Okay, notice the same thing we've seen earlier, a couple of places. But a slack hand, a lazy hand. And it's not just people who, it's not just talking about people who, never get a job. So it's also just not being diligent, because that's the hand of the diligent. I'm gonna give you an example. At a place I've worked with, I've had 401ks. In the 401ks, of course, often your only real option is to move them between mutual funds or whatever. And a lot of times the companies will encourage you, oh, don't you worry about it, let us handle it. We're the experts, we'll take care of it. You don't even have to think about it. They want you to be slack about it. But here's what's happened in the past. Like a couple of years, I made 50% of my 401ks, and those who let the company handle it made 15%. Later, through the spirit of God, one day it was like, fix your 401k. I got there and it's like, put everything in bonds, and I did. The company was telling me, oh, the stock market went down a little bit. They said, oh, it's just gonna make a correction. It'll be fine. Just leave it there. And if people were slack, didn't even inquire of the Lord, left their money there, they lost 35% of their retirement fund in a matter of weeks. I put all my money in 0% bonds, which people thought was crazy. But 0% bonds compared to 35% loss was a 35% gain. So you need to be diligent. So being diligent doesn't mean just not having a job, but focusing on what you're working on, paying attention to what's going on, checking on things like we talked before about the blessing of work, knowing the state of your flocks and herds, and taking action accordingly. And the problem here with this is sleep's not a problem. The problem is summer is the time to gather fruit, and harvest is a time, and harvest is the wrong time to sleep. This is why tabernacles, Sukkot, the feast of tabernacles, is in the fall. It's called after the harvest. It's brought in. That's the time to relax and take it easy and rest after the time of the harvest. But during harvest time, it's not the right time. And the thing about harvest time is, a lot of times the two hardest times if you're in a crop business is playing time and harvest time, and in between you got to do some maintenance. But by harvest time, often you're kind of tired to start with, and it's the busiest season, and maybe when you actually feel like sleeping the most because you're tired. But you've got to push through, because it'll bring you shame if you don't. You'll have unharvested and ruined crops, opportunities that you could have taken advantage of and been benefiting from that you didn't. And not only that, instead you created a mess because you didn't strengthen your arms and push through, even though you felt tired, but you slept when you should have been harvesting. It'll bring you shame. Proverbs 12:24-27. The hand of the diligent shall bear rule, but the slothful shall be under tribute. Heaviness in the heart of man makes it stoop, but a good word makes it glad. The righteous is more excellent than his neighbor, but the way of the wicked seduces them. The slothful man roasts not that which he took in hunting. The substance of a diligent man is precious. So, I want you to notice, again, this contrast here between the diligent and the slothful. The slothful is going to bear rule. And what's that mean? He's going to be collecting taxes, so to speak. Who's going to collect it from? The lazy. So the lazy are going to end up having to work anyways. They're not going to benefit from it because they're going to have to give it to the diligent. So I mean, under tribute means, and if they don't, they're going to get flogged or imprisoned, or in Roman times, if you got bad enough, they executed you, maybe even crucified you in some cases. So people were really motivated to not be too lazy because, well, but that's a slave mindset when you're only going to work if someone forces you to. It's a lazy mindset, and we don't have to be lazy because it's another misdemeanor here that is that people often think thin people are hardworking, fat people, or people are way overweight, I'm going to say it, are lazy, and it's not true at all. There's going to be different reasons for them being fat or thin, and they have nothing to do with laziness. And I've known some skinny people who are lazy, and here's one example of why. This lazy man killed something in hunting, but he's too lazy to skin it, clean it, and cook it. So he doesn't eat from it. He doesn't benefit from he thought, well, this part's fun, pow, like big buck hunter, got my buck. But he stops there. But the substance of the diligent man is precious. He realized he killed something in hunting. If it's hunting, he makes sure it gets eaten and stuff. And once he gets enough to eat, he doesn't go keep hunting. He's not there just killing for the fun of killing. Because it's precious to him. He realizes an animal had to die for him to get that venison. A deer had to meet its end. So and consequently, the diligent man can end up fat because he kills enough and eats enough. He can end up eat too much and end up fat. So really, contrary to people's perception, it really you're fat or thin, even really has nothing to do with whether you're lazy or diligent. There's no correlation. Proverbs 13:4. The soul of the sluggard desires and has nothing, but the soul of the diligent should be made fat. Well, yeah. Look at this. The soul. Now, notice this is not about the body. It's about the soul. The sluggard wants things. Gosh, it'd be nice if you went on a vacation down to Disney World or whatever. I personally wouldn't go there, but whatever the case is. But they never get it. I never go anywhere. Well, because they don't work. They don't work and use wisdom. They just want without being willing to work to get what they want. But the diligent gets those things and more, as we'll see. They get the things. They get all kinds of things they desire, good things they desire. Let's talk about bad things, because they're willing to work for it. Because the diligence is not working; it's working hard and working smart, working wisely. But they're willing to work hard to get it. So laziness keeps these people from that. Now, there's another aspect of laziness, why it's a curse. Proverbs 15:19. The way of the slothful man is a hedge of thorns, but the way of righteous is made plain. Now, what you first want to notice is that what's being contrasted here is not the lazy man with the diligent, like we've been seeing, the lazy man with the righteous. Lazy and righteous are opposites. Righteous people are not lazy. And the hedge of thorns means their way is hard. There's things blocking them all the way. They have barriers they can't overcome. And this made plain, literally, more accurate means made easy or made smooth, because they're walking in the path God set before them. He is preparing the way before them. But the way of the transgressor is hard. And notice, transgressor is another word for someone that's not righteous. The slothful man, its way is hard. Laziness is a curse because it makes your life harder than it needs to be. Proverbs 21:25-26. Desire of the slothful man kills him, for his hands refuse to labor. He covets greedily all day long, but the righteous gives and spares not. Okay, there's some more misconceptions. We're going to clear here with some truth. First of all, notice that the desire of the slothful man kills him. Why? Because his desire is to just sleep and not do anything. And it causes his hands to refuse to labor. And it can eventually kill him. So a time of great famine can come across. You have nothing to eat, no one's going to give him any, and he'll die. Or he didn't prepare for some disaster, and it comes upon him, and he dies. Notice he lives in an area prone to tornadoes, like back in the day. Doesn't think, fill a tornado shelter. My neighbors have all told me I need to build a little cellar to run into in case a tornado comes, a little place to hide and keep myself safe. But I'm too lazy. Then the tornado comes and they're dead, and torn apart by the tornado, pieces of them all over the place, because they were lazy. Laziness is a curse. And notice here's the misconception I want you to notice. People think because someone's got some money, have lots of money, and they're giving the charity that somehow they're lucky. And those other people there were somehow unlucky. And the people with the money are greedy. The people without the money are not. No. The poorest people I ever met were some of the greediest I ever met. They coveted. They were just too lazy to work to get what they coveted after. They covet greedily. What's coveting? It's wanting something that belongs to somebody else, generally. It's not the 10th commandment doesn't say, thou shalt not covet a wife, desire a wife. Thou shalt not desire a servant. Thou shalt not desire a farm animal, except. It says you shall not desire your neighbors. Well, if you're lazy, then to get one of those things, I got to do some work to get it. But I want it, but I don't want to do the work. You're going to start coveting someone else's. And coveting is like the sin of idolatry. And you're going to be sitting there unfulfilled, wanting things that you can't have, envying other people, because laziness has made you so. But the righteous, the righteous aren't just out there working to get for themselves. They're working so they have something to give to others and spare not. My personal economy's went up and down. And when it's up, I can be a lot more generous than when it's down. Not to say when it's down, I don't give anything, but I can't give as much because I don't have as much. So the righteous are working hard, not just so they can get their own desires and get their own and take care of their own needs, but so they have leftover to help other people, particularly people in real need. And they do not spare about. They're glad. They're happy to write the big check. Okay. Now, so again, notice the contrast between laziness and righteousness again. We're going to get one more here about that. Ezekiel 16:46-50. And your elder sister Samaria, she and her daughters that dwell at your left hand, and your younger sister that dwells at your right hand is Solomon and her daughters. Yet you have not walked in their ways, nor done their abominations. But as if they were a little thing, you have corrupted more than they in all their ways, in all your ways. As I live, says the Lord, Solomon, her sister has not done, nor she nor her daughters, if you have done, you and your daughters. Behold, this is the iniquity of your sister Sodom. Pride, fullness of bread, abundance of idleness was in her. And in her daughters, neither she strengthened the hand of the poor or the needy. They were haughty and committed themselves to abomination before me. Therefore, I took them away as I saw good. So here's the thing here. Sodom, the people who are righteous, people who are lazy. This is one of the sins of Sodom. Abundance of laziness was in her. No, she had fullness of bread. She just wanted to sit around and eat. But she wouldn't give it to anyone else. She did not strengthen the hand of the poor or the needy. She was covetous. Came across this some way, perhaps inherited it. Well, the land tells us, the Bible tells us, like the Garden of Eden. Didn't take much effort for them to get food. And they were just lazy because of it. And proud. You know, look at all the good stuff we got. And they didn't even have to really work hard for it. And isn't that the way people are sometimes? Their children are full of pride because they give them everything. Not concerned the kid that doesn't have anything had to earn everything they have. As if they somehow did it on their own minds of appreciating the fact they had parents who were good to them and gave it to them. And not being humble about that. That's how Sodom was. And this is what lazy people often do. And they don't want to take care of other people because they're lazy. If I take away from that, I'm going to have to work to replace it. So laziness puts you in the same class as the wicked and Sodom and Gomorrah, who God destroyed. Laziness is a curse that will bring you into the curse of God. Now, there's another reason why laziness is a curse we're going to look at here in Proverbs 18:9. He that is slothful in his work is a burden to him that is a great waster or a destroyer. So if you're lazy in your work, you're just doing the bare minimum necessary, looking for how little you can get by with instead of how much you can get done in the amount of time you have allotted, given the resources you have. You are just like someone that goes around destroying things. And it expounds upon this a little bit here. Solomon does in Proverbs 24:30-34. I went by the field of the slothful, and by the vineyard of the man void of understanding. Lo, it was all grown over with thorns, and nettles had covered the face thereof, and the stone wall thereof was broken down. And I saw and considered it well, and looked upon it, and received instruction. Sleep a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall your poverty come as one that travels, and your want as an armed man. So once again, this business about sleep leading poverty to come upon you like an unexpected mugger, just one day hitting you up and taking all your money and leaving you beaten half dead. That's what sleeping when you shouldn't be sleeping will do. But how's this? What's a vineyard? Well, you're a great business. That's your means of production. That's what wealth is: income producing assets. It's not, strictly speaking, silver and gold are not wealth. Silver and gold are storages of wealth. They tend to not lose value, but they don't create more income. So the vineyard is this man, this void of man, someone that doesn't know what the heck they're doing. As a vineyard, they haven't been taking care of it. And not only are they not benefiting from the income they would get from it, it actually starts deteriorating because this world has that tendency, the fourth law of entropy, which to put it in layman's term is the universe is falling apart. Okay, to put it in simple terms, and it takes effort to resist against that. So it's not enough just to do if you have this vineyard just to sit there and pick the grapes and do the minimum amount of pruning possible. No, you also have to weed it out to keep the thorns and nettles from showing up, and the walls will eventually start collapsing. And this doesn't happen when the factory wall is broken down. It doesn't happen all at once. I had a little crack here, a little crack there from the ground shifting, whatever. A piece fell out here, a piece fell out there, and after years of neglect, it broke down. And it's not unlike how areas in inner cities become perhaps where affluent neighborhoods become slums. And the problem is there's a guy often called the slum lord, who owns all this property, but he doesn't take care of it. He doesn't care about it. He does the bare minimum possible. And as a result, residents that were nice and doctors and lawyers and stuff want to live in, at least they could get their own house because they were convenient to where they worked or whatever. And executives wanted to stay in when they were out from out of town and whatever, become places of low rent, high crime, overran with rats and whatever. Because instead of the owner taking care of them things, he took the money, was lazy, spent the money himself, enjoying himself, whatever, not taking care of it, didn't get up and look around, didn't know the state of his own affairs, and it deteriorates to the fact it's a slum, and it's just really probably ripe for the picking for someone who's diligent to go in and buy and work at it and improve it and make a good profit. So laziness will not only keep you from getting things you want, it'll take from you what you already have, just by neglect by neglecting maintenance. Laziness is a curse. That's why it says like a destroyer. And by much slothfulness, the building decays, and through idleness of the hands, the house drops through. Again, like the slumlord I said, but also on the individual level, not just something that you do to make money, like the vineyard or the slumlord, you have that property to make money from collecting rent, but also where you live in your personal dwelling. And the best example I know of this is back for the price of shingles went to the roof and got real high, and they were actually pretty cheap. But satellite dishes that you put on your roof were relatively expensive. They were brand new. For about a small house for about the same price of doing putting a new roof on, you could buy a satellite dish. I drove by a house in Council Hill, going in Oklahoma, going somewhere one time, and the house, the roof was caved in, but it had one of those satellite dishes on top of it. The guy, instead of saying, "Hey, I need to," and maybe it's instead of going, "Hey, I need to fix my roof. Let's buy that." Say that he wasn't helping, going to do it himself. Let's pay. We'll fix that. No, I want. It'd be awesome to sit there and watch TV all day and hang out and do nothing and generally be lazy. So he invested his money on a satellite dish instead of his roof. And at the end, he probably was neither to enjoy either. He probably had to leave the house. Now, satellite's still up there because he couldn't live in the house and he couldn't enjoy either. Because he was lazy and didn't direct his resources the way he should have. Laziness is a robber that will take from you what you already have. It is a thief. Now, we're going to some more about laziness here. About some more causes and so on and so forth. Proverbs 20:4. The sluggard will not plow by reason of the code. Therefore, he shall beg in the harvest and have nothing. Now, for those of you who've never grown up with growing crops or anything, or had a garden, some things have to be planted in the winter, like barley, late fall, early winter, so you can harvest in early spring. Yes, early spring's correct, early spring. So they can have a short growing season. And other things have to be done various seasons in the winter, so they got a season when they're going to ripen, and they got to be a certain growth rate by then. So you got to plant them in the winter. Well, here's the thing, in the winter it's cold. Now, often you can't plant them if there's snow on the ground. Often you can't really plow too well or whatever they had. But there's not snow on the ground. You can often plow or get out with a hoe like we did. Some of our crops we grow in our garden. My grandfather's 1 acre large garden. We had to plant in the winter, and we'd be out there, bundled up, taking care of those things, because otherwise, harvest time we weren't going to have anything. And we also milked cows. The thing about milking cows is you can skip like one milking a week with them. You have to milk them twice a day. And so what it is it was actually one day it was the wind chill was below 40 degrees. Snow was like 2 foot on the ground. I mean, sorry, below negative. The wind chill was negative 40. I'm sorry. That's the same thing Fahrenheit or Celsius, by the way. Snow was too on the ground, been there for a while. Schools have been shut. Everything was locked down. We're trudging through the snow, my kid practically waist deep, getting the cows and milking them. Because you have to milk them, code or not. The diligent person finds a way to overcome the obstacle, the code. They put a coat on, gloves. My Uncle Ken had electric socks, and socks had batteries to keep his feet warm. And they find a way to work. The sluggard's like, wow, work's not gonna be easy today. I think I'm not gonna go. Laziness will do those bad things I've told you if you don't learn to overcome obstacles. Quit being lazy about it. Start thinking of a way to overcome them. Because otherwise, you're going to end up begging the harvest and having nothing. Everyone else out having a good time, you're not going to be able to do anything because you don't have anything because you were stupid, because you didn't take care of yourself and you don't have anything in the harvest. No harvest, no money, no fun. Or maybe no food, no eating. And again, without being thin and lazy. Proverbs 26:12-16 talks some more about this things that cause laziness and the curse it brings. See a man wise in his own conceit? There is more hope for a fool than of him. The slothful man says, "There's a lion in the way. A lion is in the streets." And the door turns upon his hinges, so does the slothful upon his bed. The slothful hides his hand in his bosom. It grieves him to bring it again to his mouth. The sluggard wiser in his own conceit than 7 men that can render a reason. So, another reason that laziness is a curse is it'll make you conceited. Make you have a false sense of wisdom. And the reason why there's more hope for a fool than him, and I'm not sure which Hebrew word for fool this is. One of them just means uneducated. Well, all you got to do them is educate them. That's pretty easy. The second one's someone is more accurately a fool in English. It's someone that has to learn the hard way, but they do learn. They may have to hit the concrete once or twice, but eventually they quit hitting the concrete. But the last one is best translated as a scoffer. And the scoffer, it's never their fault. They cannot learn even from their own mistakes. It's not their fault. They didn't do such and such. Someone else should have. It's like if they got caught robbing a bank, it's the getaway driver's fault for not evading the cops or whatever. They don't say the problem was they were robbing a bank in the first place. But whatever the case is, there's more hope for them than someone that's wise in their own conceit who thinks they know it all. The lazy person will think they're so wise that no one can reason with them, and their excuses are lame. There's a lion in the way, a lion in the streets. Now, of course, in modern America, that's ridiculous, really ridiculous. Something that happened if maybe there's a circus in town or something, somehow escaped from the Tulsa Zoo. It's just not, But even in ancient Israel, where lions were out in the wilderness, they generally didn't come in the street because, well, they first of all, a lot of cities had walls around them to keep predators out. But even if they came to a village or something, the men in the village were likely to fill a thing with arrows. So it's a lame excuse. But I think they're so wise in this lame excuse. And notice again, they just want to get out of bed. They want to turn on their bed. They like a door on its hinges. And they think, and you cannot reason with them. Honestly, all you can do is let them hit the concrete. Let them get hungry. Because look at this. You don't even feed them. I've actually had a friend this way once. He was hungry. There's grapes on the table. He wanted me to go to the table and bring the grapes and put them in his mouth for him. Of course, I didn't do it. He was asking the wrong guy. No, Mr. Lazy, go get your own grapes, But this is another reason why lazy people will end up thin. Because they're just too lazy to feed themselves. They're only too lazy cook what they cut, the food they got. If someone else cooks it or doesn't need cooking, they're too lazy to even eat it. Because, oh, I have to get out of bed. You're making me get out of bed and go to the kitchen table and put my own grapes in my mouth. You know, that was, gosh, it was pathetic, but it's still true. Hey, another reason why, another thing about what causes people to be, the problems of laziness what causes laziness. Why it's a curse. Proverbs 28:19 through 22. He that tills his land shall have plenty of bread, but he that falls at the vain person shall have poverty enough. A fat man shall abound with blessings, but he that makes haste shall be rich, shall not be innocent. So a respected person is not good, for a piece of bread that man will transgress. He that hastes to be rich has an evil eye, and considers not that poverty shall come upon him. An evil eye here doesn't mean like the evil eye, the twitchy eye or whatever. It means everything they look at looks bad. They can't see the good in anything. They see a problem for every solution. And they don't consider the part of, and what this is someone's involved like a so-called get rich quick scheme. He doesn't want to work. It's he that works that's going to play. But instead, he's going to follow after vain people. People are telling him empty nonsense, making false promises, lies. An example of both of these that could apply could be flipping houses. Now, if you ever watched some of these shows, people who are successful flipping houses, and they're being honest, you find they do a lot of work. What they typically do is they buy down some rundown house, obviously, usually taken care of by a lazy person like we saw before, like in the decay at a low price. They put a lot of work into it, invest into it, and then sell it at a high price and then make a profit. You know, so the profit is their wages for their work. But there's also these people out there who are like, well, flip houses, no money down, no money down, using other people's money, blah, blah, blah. And it's all geared towards you can get rich without doing any work. And people fall for it. No one gets rich is the person selling the books or whatever, telling people how to flip houses without doing any work. And all kinds of people buy into these schemes and poverty comes upon them. No, they did not come rich from flipping houses. They lost money from paying the guy, going to his seminars, buying his books, whatever, and maybe investing in bad advice he gave them, and ruining their credit and whatever. Laziness is a curse. And I want to touch on something I forgot to mention a moment ago. If someone's renting, it's not their responsibility to maintain the rental property. It's the owner's. A sense of ownership comes with owning. Well, notice there when the vineyard that was felon was the guy who owned its vineyard. The slumlord owned the property, became slum. It's not his tenant's fault for not keeping things up. It's not their job. Their job is to pay him rent. His job is to take that rent money and keep things up. And of course, make a profit so he can take care of the needs of his own family and everything. But his first responsibility is to maintain stuff and keep it up. And I had a neighbor who actually had someone rent, and they didn't have a written agreement. They'll do such and such. They got mad. They rent some renters, and the renters want to keep the property up the way they used to. The renters hadn't agreed to it. It wasn't their job. It was the lady's job, who was renting to them to keep the property up. In the end, their lease was up. She sent them home. She quit renting the place and sold it to somebody at less money than what it was really worth, and they fixed it up. Her problem was she was lazy. It's not the renter's proper responsibility to maintain the property. It's the owner's responsibility. No ownership, no sense of ownership. I want to make that clear before I move on. Okay, Matthew 25:14 through 18. So the kingdom of heaven is a man traveling to a far country, who called his own servants, delivered them to them his goods. And to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, and to every man severally according to his several ability. And straightway he took his journey. Then he that received the 5 talents went and traded the same, made them 5 other talents. Likewise, he that received the 2, he also gained 2 other. But he that received the 1 went and digged in the earth and hid his Lord's money. Okay, we looked at the other side of this last week about the 2 and the 5 talent guy. And notice how much talents each person got is a reflection of the confidence of the man who went there. And he didn't have a lot of confidence in the third guy. So only gave him 1. And the third guy is proving his lack of confidence worthwhile, true. Because what he digs in the earth. It's like putting it under the mattress. The only one that's a good idea is not being lazy. Is like my example. I put my money in 0% bonds when everything was falling down. Then I was being diligent by hiding it, if you will. I was retaining its value, keeping its value. But otherwise, that's just being lazy. So let's read on and see how this goes for this third guy. Matthew 25, 24 through 27. Which he had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew that you are a hard man, reaping where you have not sown, gathering where you have not strawed. And I was afraid and went and hid your talent in the earth. And lo, there you have that is yours. His Lord answered him and said, Thou wicked and slothful servant, you knew that I reap where I sowed not, and I gather where I have not strawed. You therefore should have put my money to the exchangers. My cousin should receive my own with usury. Now, usury is King James word for interest. So he's saying he should at least put it in the bank and drew some interest. Anything was better than putting it in the dirt. So, the master's not happy. And I want you to notice, he calls him a wicked and slothful servant, wicked and lazy. Why? He is the man's servant, the man in training him what to do. Fear, and notice the connection to fear. He was afraid. Fear is not faith. Fear is the opposite of faith. Someone's in faith will not let fear run their actions. You have confidence in what God said that leads to action. You don't have fear. Daniel went in the lion's den without fear. Now, if he hadn't had faith and God wasn't backing him up, he had every reason to be afraid. But this man lacks faith. He's wicked and he's lazy. So again, laziness makes you wicked. These are the words of Yeshua here, Jesus, in this parable. So let's see the end result of being lazy, because it also means you're wicked. Take the talent from him and give it to him which has 10 talents. And everyone that has, he shall be given abundance, and then he shall have abundance. Then has not, shall be taken away that which he has. And cast you the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Okay, so Yeshua, in this parable, first of all, he says, that guy's not doing anything with his talent. Give it to someone that has some, because I know they're gonna trust them to work hard and make smart decisions and give me back at least what's mine. In fact, it'd been better for that other guy to have tried and failed than to have done nothing. But and see, talent in English has 2 meanings. This is a measure of weight, right? A certain amount, a considerable amount of gold or silver. We don't want metal. It's a measure for metal, typically. But in English, it's also a talent. Like I got a talent for singing, a talent for this. And a lot of us, we have talents the Lord's given us. Because we're lazy, we never develop them. We've hidden them in the dirt. So even that talent we got, we're going to lose if we don't use it for God's purposes. And when it says outer darkness, other places that use, that's talking about hell. Laziness into this man up in hell. Weeping and gnashing of teeth. Again, it's frequently usually used about hell. And make no mistake, hell is a real place that Yeshua said so in Luke, in the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. Laziness can send you to hell, and that is a serious curse of laziness. Now, putting all this together, we're looking at a little advice from the apostles about the curse of laziness. 3 more ways that laziness is a curse. Second Thessalonians 3:10 through 15. Even were we with you, or even when we were with you, we commend you, that anyone would not work, neither should they eat. For you hear there were some walking among you disorderly, working not at all, but are busybodies. Now such of them as such we command, exhort by our Lord Jesus Christ, to quietness they work, and eat their own bread. But you, brethren, be not weary in well-doing. And if any man obey not our word by this epistle, note that man, have no company with him, may be ashamed. Yet count him not as an enemy, but admonish him as a brother. So I want you to notice, they had a rule. Now, I talked a while back about St. Patrick. And St. Patrick set up in Ireland in places what St. Illard had set up in England, which he got from it's actually in Acts chapters like 3 and 4, where the believers were all gathered together in Jerusalem, so they were scattered and had everything in common. And they kind of operate the same way, but these things, a lot of people make this way, they came in, they went to the gate, and they just belonged. No, they went to the gate, they had to agree. And if they didn't agree, they were shown the way out. And these communities were set up like this because they were surrounded by hostile people, just like kibbutz were set up in Israel. They were surrounded by hostile people. So these people, the Roman Catholics, the false Church of Rome, tried to cast them later as Catholic-style monasteries, but they weren't. These monks weren't monks at all. They were just men who believed who were following Yeshua, and they brought their wives and children there. And of course, it's to protect the community. Well, in the community, they had rules. All right, and if you didn't obey the rules, you didn't get to stay in the community. And this was also what the Pilgrims did originally. However, their problem was they had so many strangers who didn't adhere to the rules. They had to give up. They had to give up that idea and do things differently. But here was the rule, because this is one of these rules that Paul's writing with a similar type community in Thessaloniki. He says the rule was if anyone doesn't work, he doesn't eat. Because otherwise, those aren't working and walk around and they're disorderly. They're just busybodies. They're going around just causing trouble, getting other people's business. So everyone needs to just disrupt and keep other people from doing their work. So as quiet as they need to work and eat their own bread. And they need not be weary. And if anyone doesn't obey them, note that man have no company with him. They may be ashamed. And what they did in those things was they follow these rules. We'll just go St. Patrick, but the same pattern was true for the Pilgrims. The Pilgrims initially, and for the St. Illard and St. Illard, they got this rules from, and the guy started it was actually a disciple of Paul. St. Illard was a disciple of Paul. He got this idea from there. Okay, most of their company keeping company with each other. During the day they worked, and whatever, at night they slept. Most of their company was they ate together when they ate together. Maybe at breakfast, a little bit, lunch, a little bit, dinner particularly. Well, if you didn't work, you didn't get to come to the table. You didn't get to come over and people didn't talk to you. You didn't get to participate in all the socializing. And they weren't being mean. They were helping them drive laziness, choose to take laziness out of their life, because laziness is a curse. Because in the end, it will not keep you from eating, as we've seen over and over again. You can be lazy and skinny. It will keep you from enjoying the company of other people. Because lazy people wear on other people. Even other lazy people eventually get tired of them. I once saw a couple of lazy people. I think it was 3 feet from them. Either one got picked it up and done it, and they kept waiting for them to do it. And they both had this attitude: no way am I letting you be more lazy than me. Even lazy people irritate irritated by lazy people. Lazy is a curse. It'll keep people away from you and keep you and make you lonely. There's some more Shaul, Paul says about this. If any men have children or nephews, let them learn first to show piety at home and to requite their parents, for that is good and acceptable before God. Now she is a widow indeed and desolate, and trusts in God, continues in supplications and prayers day and night. But she that lives in pleasure is dead while she lives. And these things give charge, that they may be blameless. If any provide not for his own, especially those of his own house, he has denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. So I want you to look at this and think about this. Okay, first of all, if what someone, and the word nephews here, as I mentioned before, in King James meant grandchildren, not nephew like we think of, and typically not like your spouse's kids. I mean your spouse's kids. I'm sorry, your siblings' kids or your spouse's siblings' kids. It means grandchildren. And how they show pride at home, they repay their parents. How do that? They take care of them when they're owed. But the woman who's a widow, and not a widow indeed, is just trying to live off other people. Yeah, her husband died. It's tragic. She's young. She can go get a job. But she's not. Instead she wants to be lazy, and maybe she wants to live in pleasure. She don't want to get a job. She wants to do what's comfortable. She wants to play the poor pitiful me card. My husband's dead, blah blah blah. Well, laziness is causing her to be dead while she's alive. Her body's alive, but she's becoming spiritually dead. Like the man who buried his talents. But notice this: if you don't provide for your own, you got this widow, and you're her child or her grandchild, and especially those of your own house. You're a father. You have children. You don't provide them. You have denied the faith. There's no use telling me you're a Christian, that you're a follower of Yeshua, that you're any of those things. You have denied it with your actions. But it is worse than this. I mean, you have told people in essence with your life, the whole thing's not true. Yeshua is a sham. God's a sham. This happened to Israel. The Gentiles blaspheme because of me, or it says you profane his holy name because they did all this wickedness. But everyone knew everyone associated with God. They told everyone, we're the chosen people, we're God's chosen people. Yet they lived worse than say my words in the Bibles. They lived worse than the Gentiles around them. Yeah, you denied the faith, and you're worse than an infidel. That means an idol worshiper. These aren't my words. Again, they're God's words. If you're not providing for your own, you're not going out there working and taking care of your own household, or you should take care of your widowed mother or grandmother, but especially your own children. You or she, it could be a woman too. If you're a widow, you need to be working. And we'll look at the rest of what you need to be doing in a moment. You are worse than an idol worshiper. I have a friend who was a Hindu. I have a number of Hindu friends. And his father got sick. He had a nice job over here. He was working hard too. And he had a nice job. And he went over there. He had to give up everything accumulated over here. Went back to India, lived in a slum area where he grew up. And to take care of his parents. Now, he did work it out with his boss that they let him keep working from over there because, well, even though, despite the time difference, he's such a good worker. See, hard work paid off for him. But still, he gave up a lot. And yet he sees people, he's like, Danny, I see all these people who say they're Christians, yet they don't take care of their parents. Yeah, he was an idol worshiper, but he was better than you are. This is not my words, it's God's words. Laziness will rob you of your witness. It will drive people from the gospel. away from Messiah. That's a great curse of laziness. We're going to look at the last curse of laziness here in 1 Timothy 5:11 through 15. But the younger widow refused. When they've got their wax wanton against Christ, they will marry, having damnation because they cast off their first faith. Whereall they learn to be idle, wandering about from house to house, and not only idle, but tattlers also and busybodies, speaking things which they ought not. Therefore, I will the younger women marry, bear children, guide the house, give no occasion to the adversary to speak reproachfully. And for some have already turned aside after Satan. Now, look at this. These younger women, they're talking about widows. What's this? Because why? Because they're going to cast off their faith. They will marry. Well, because basically the deal was, I will do things for the congregation, like keep the church building clean, whatever it is. So it wasn't work for nothing unless the wills were really owed. Okay, it wasn't money for nothing. But and you just take care of me the rest of my life. But then they get married, and they broke that. You can think of it that way. They with their words were marrying themselves to Messiah, but now they're committing adultery because they married someone else. Because they married someone because they've cast off their faith. They didn't keep they didn't keep their word. They didn't mean what they said. And also they were idle, lazy, whatever house to house. And not only were they idle, but tattlers also. But they were keeping other people from working. They're creating gossip. So what's the solution? And worse yet, they will already. At the end, laziness will cause people to turn aside after Satan. They'll take you off God's team and onto Satan's team. I've talked extensively about this whole once saved, always saved nonsense. I led people through 6 lessons where I examined every single verse people have used to do this and show they're taking out context, often within a few verses of right there where they're at. We've taken the context of the entire Bible. Every one of them, every case. Where you're talking about Esau, whoever, the end message was this: people reap what they sowed. God will not be mocked. God rewarded them according to what they did. This appeals to lazy people, but you can turn aside from Satan. And who's talking? He's talking about believers. The only believers can cast off their faith. He's talking about believers. Laziness can cause you to cast off your faith and to turn aside after Satan, and that is the greatest curse of all. And a way to avoid it, if a woman's below age 60, married, and below age 60 becomes a widow, is to remarry. It's not even really an option. And this is not unlike the rule Julius Caesar made law. When Julius Caesar became emperor of Rome had a terrible problem with urchins. They had children who were born out of wedlock, who ran around the streets all over the place and stole out necessity to eat, and so on and so forth. When Julius Caesar decided to fix the problem at the root of the problem, first of all, he gathered the urchins and didn't kill them. Whatever, he put them in the Roman army. Roman army. Some have been a little tough. Some may have died getting it. They gave them jobs, but in the stem, he made a law. Everyone had to be married. Every man between the age of 20 and 60 had to be married. And they weren't, they had to pay a $5,000 fine. Every woman, in today's money, $5,000 American money, every woman between 20 and 50 had to be married, or they had to pay a $5,000 fine. If someone got a divorce, a legal divorce in Roman law, they were exempt that year, but by the next year they had to pay it. And if their spouse died, that year they were exempt. The year their spouse died, when they came tax time, my spouse died this year. You had to have some sort of proof. You were exempt that year, but the next year you had to pay the $5,000 fine if you weren't married. And the result of it was people quit living together. People got married, and the urchin problem came to practically nothing. All these social problems we have in this country, a lot of them stem back to people men not being men because they're lazy. Laziness is a curse. It's a curse to every nation. And on an individual, it'll cause you to cast off your faith, turn aside to Satan, and end up in hell. Avoid the curse of laziness. And one thing I want to clear up before I close off is I don't want you to confuse laziness with rest. We're commanded when these things are looking for sleep, then you need sleep to live. It's not sleeping when you should be working, sleeping in the harvest. But you should not be sleeping excessively. Should not love sleep. Sleep should be a necessity. Something you do because you need to, not your first choice of activities. And another thing is rest. It's not laziness. In fact, people who say this found there's rest that's productive and rest that's not, and they actually call the unproductive rest lazy rest. And example of lazy rest is excessive sleep, or getting on the internet and just wandering around mindlessly, or getting on Facebook and just arguing with people for no good reason over, or getting arguing with people they don't want to talk reason. They just like to argue, and you do too. In fact, that actually will wear you out, make you more tired than you started. These are all kinds of examples of useful rest, of diligent rest. Would be like playing a board game, going out and taking a walk, where you're doing something in your rest. Some people do need a little more sleep than others, and you got a day to get caught up in your sleep. It's called the Sabbath. Any other that you're not supposed to work on that day anyways. You congregate together, and you can sleep the rest of the day if you want to. I mean, you congregate and spend time with God and sleep as much as you need that day to get caught up for the week. But excessive sleep is laziness, and it makes you more tired. It's a curse. Avoid the curse of laziness. Okay, that's all I have until next week. Oh, one more thing. And also, not all work is productive work. I have a friend. He has a classic car. Him and his friend he has another friend. They just go in one's garage and they just work on the restore it. And they're working hard, but it's not bringing any income in. In fact, they're spending income on that car, and they'll probably never recover it. I mean, it's not a business. They don't intend on selling a car. It's just their hobby. They're working hard, but it's not. Remember, we don't want to just work. You want to work wisely. Nothing wrong with what they're doing, but if he quits doing his regular job, the one that brings money in to do it, then there's a problem. So don't confuse work with productive work. Unproductive work is not the same as laziness, but it can cause some of the same problems. Okay, now I'm ready to sign off. Till next week, Shabbat Shalom.